Hello everyone and welcome back into another video. This is going to be the first build of 2025, so we are starting strong with Nidus Prime. His whole kit revolves around him gaining mutation stacks and using those to both survive and deal more damage with his abilities. But that is enough introductions for now, so let's jump into the build. First of all, let's have a look at his abilities. Nidus has the ability to use 15 stacks of mutation to pretty much avoid that and become invincible for 5 seconds and gain 50% of his health back. This has no cooldowns, so if you keep on dying, you will keep on losing stacks and eventually you will run out of stacks and you will just die. So be careful, this is not being immortal, it mostly means you won't die very easily. Moving on, we have his first ability called Virulence. When casting this ability, you summon an infested path in front of you that will travel in a straight line and deal damage to all enemies it touches. It has a width of 4 meters, even though it's not specified, and yeah, it's pretty much what allows Nidus to deal damage. And it also refunds energy based on how many enemies you hit. The more enemies you hit, the more energy you get. The damage of this ability also increases the more stacks of mutations you have. Moving on, we have Larva. This is Nidus's grouping ability, and it allows him to pretty much grab all enemies in a very big radius and collect them into a huge ball in front of him that he can use to build mutation stacks thanks to Virulence, because it will hit all enemies inside the larva if it's close enough to the ground, and additionally all enemies killed while inside the larva have a 50% chance to grant you an additional stack of mutation. Larva ends after the duration runs out or after you kill all enemies inside of it. Then we have Parasitic Link and Ravenous, and these two abilities use mutation stacks to be casted. They do not use any energy, so the only requirement is to have at least 1 mutation stack for Parasitic Link or at least 3 mutation stacks for Ravenous. Parasitic Link allows Nidus to link to either an ally or an enemy, and depending on which target you choose, it will deal different things. If you link to an ally, you'll grant both you and that ally additional ability strength. If you target an enemy, Nidus will instead gain damage redirection, and a portion of the damage he takes will be transferred to the enemy. Additionally, Parasitic Link has an interaction with Virulence, and that is, the target you're linked to will also summon an instance of Virulence that will deal damage and will also grant you additional mutation stacks. Nidus also gains status immunity when he is linked to someone, so that's pretty good. And finally, we have Ravenous, his fourth ability. After casting Ravenous, you create this AoE infested field around you with an 8-meter radius that cannot be modded. Standing inside of this field will regenerate health to both you and allies inside this field. And additionally, maggots will start jumping out of the field and attacking enemies in range. And these maggots will also be able to explode, dealing damage in a very huge radius if you build for some range. And all enemies hit by the explosion will grant you additional mutation stacks. The way these maggots will explode is either if you cast Virulence on top of them, or if Ravenous ends, that will make all maggots explode. If you're interested in seeing where the maggots are, you can hold Virulence and it will both highlight the AoE of Virulence and also show the maggots with a little mark on them, so they're going to be very easy to spot in the middle of a fight. Right. Those were Nidus' abilities. Let's move on to Archon Shards. I'm using 2 Emerald Archon Shards with +2 stacks to corrosive, that way I can armor strip enemies. 1 Tauforge Archon Shard with energy maximum, that way I don't have to waste a mod slot on energy. 1 Tauforge Ember Archon Shard with casting speed, that is to increase the speed at which we cast Virulence and Ravenous, mostly Virulence because this will be our main source of damage. And finally, you have a flex slot that you can use for anything else. I just added more base HP, that way whenever I enter a mission I don't just straight up get one-shotted, because that has happened many times to me, and this way I fixed that problem, but you can of course equip anything else in here. And now let's have a look at the mods I'm using for this build. I have Steel Charge as my aura, but you can of course equip any other aura if you add more format to the build. Prime Sure-Footed in my Exo slot, but this one is not needed. It's just nice to have whenever my Parasitic Link runs out, but it's just a flex slot. Blind Rage and Umbral Intensify for more ability strength, and the negative ability efficiency is countered by Streamline, although having a negative efficiency on Nidus is not a problem because his one refunds a lot of energy, and the less efficiency you have, the more energy it refunds. Then I'm using Umbral Fiber as well, and this will also boost the amount of ability strength Umbral Intensify gives us, while also increasing Nidus's armor. Then I'm using Overextended for more ability range at the cost of some power strength, Adaptation to increase our resistance to damage types, and then I'm using 2 augments. Parasitic Vitality will increase Nidus's and the ally he's bound to HP by 4% per mutation stack that you have, And the 4% is increased by your power strength. In my case, for example, I have 9.2, and this will be boosted even more because I'm using Madurai. And finally, the other augment is Abundant Mutation. This is an augment for your passive, and it allows Nidus to gain an additional 200 stacks of mutation. Your base stacks are 100, so that means in total we now have 300. The only negative thing is that it makes your Undying have a 30-second cooldown, so if you die within those 30 seconds, you will not trigger the passive, and you will instead just die, so it's a bit more risky, but it also means our Virulence and our Maggots will deal like 2 times more damage, and that's pretty good. Moving to the Arcanes, I'm using Arcane Grace to regenerate a percentage of my HP per second whenever I take health damage. And finally, I'm using Arcane Bellicose to increase ability strength per every 250 max health up to 72%. And right now, this doesn't seem like a good idea, but when we start stacking Parasitic Vitality, we do get a lot more HP, a lot more HP, and this Arcane will always be at 72%. Let's now have a look at weapons and the rest of my arsenal. I'm using the Incarnon turret, and these are the evolutions I went for, and the build I'm using is just your usual turret build. You can of course change this to whatever you are used to. I just like this build. It's able to delete enemies very fast, and I really enjoy that. Moving to my sidearm, I am using the Furious, also the Incarnon form. These are the Incarnon evolutions. You can of course change any of them as you want. This is just what I'm used to and what I prefer, and this is the build. I am using secondary Fortifier just because having some more overguard once in a while is not that bad of an idea, but you can of course just go for Cascadia Flare or any other arcane that will increase your damage if you want a more DPS oriented Furious. And finally, just for fashion, I'm using the Cost Assist, and I have these very beautiful colors, as you can see. And the build I am using is this one. I also made a video about this weapon. It's actually pretty good, and in this case, it's gonna be nice to have just because it applies a lot of statuses. Moving on, I am using Madurai as my focus tree, and that is, as always, for the 50% casting speed and the additional 40% ability strength. We also need a companion, and the 2 companions I usually use are either my Panzerwurfpfeiler or my Hound. Either of them is fine. You can use, again, whatever you prefer. But in my case, I'm going to use the Hound instead, and this is the build I am currently using for this bad boy. It's nothing crazy, and the same goes for the weapon the dog is using, and that's pretty much the whole arsenal. I'm going to remove my companion right now because it's gonna be easier to showcase what's happening on screen, and at least my dog won't just kill everything in seconds. So let's start with the showcase. So how do we use Nidus? First of all, we want to cast our larva and then start stomping with your Virulence, our first ability. And if you want a preview of where you're going to stomp, just hold your 1 and this will show this rectangle on the ground that will pretty much allow you to see where the ability is going to go. It also shows how far the ability will reach, so it's nice to have a preview of that. So let's start by doing that. First larva, and then we start stomping a bit. And as you can see, we are gaining on our bottom right some nice stacks of mutation. A very important thing about mutation stacks is that they are divided in 5 parts, and that means you have to hit enemies 5 times to gain a full stack. So for example, if I just stomp this guy once, I only gain 1 out of 5 of a mutation stack. If I keep on doing that, I will eventually reach 5, and that will grant me an additional mutation stack, and that's pretty much it. Let's group the enemies again, let's start stomping some more, let's reach about 10 stacks. And this should be enough. There we go. Now that we have 12 stacks, you can see that my Nidus has also changed in appearance, and that's because the more stacks you have, the more your Warframe will react to it, and it will start showing more of the infested parts, which is pretty cool. Most importantly, we can now use our Parasitic Link and also our Ravenous. So let's just do that. And now we pretty much are going to be very hard to kill. What we're going to do now is just start stomping with Virulence and just start on grabbing more and more stacks of our mutation. There is going to be a delay on the stacks because the meter will go up very slowly, but there is a way to bypass that, and that is by swapping to your operator and going back to your Warframe, and it will magically increase a lot more in this case because yeah, otherwise it takes forever and it becomes annoying because it doesn't show how many you have, it just shows where it's at, which is not great. So let's just do that again. We have right now 236 stacks. That means our damage is gonna be a lot higher than before. It's dealing 21,000 damage to all those enemies inside, and that is done twice if we are linked to someone. And in this case, it's gonna deal 22,000 2 times to all those enemies. It keeps on increasing and increasing, and when you reach the maximum amount of stacks, the meter will change into that icon, which is great, I guess. But that's when you know you are maxed on your stacks, and you can pretty much do whatever you want because you cannot gain any more of those, and the only way to lose them is by casting your abilities. So yeah, that's pretty much how it's gonna work. Nullifiers can also reduce your mutation stacks, and you also lose mutation stacks whenever you change area in Sanctuary Onslaught. Alright, let's now have some more lively enemies, and I'm going to link myself to one of them. I instantly have 18,000 HP, and it's not my maximum amount yet because I can also grab my Madurai buff and recast my 3, and now I have 25,000 HP. You can of course cast your 4, cast your 2 and group enemies so they won't attack you, use your 1 to deal damage, you can use your weapon to armor strip enemies so you deal even more damage with your virulence, gain back all your energy, which is pretty cool. I think you need to hit like 5 to start gaining more energy, but it's not that hard. You usually have more than 5 enemies in one larva instance, and you also have those maggots on the ground. And as I said before, if you hold your 1, you'll be able to see where the maggots are. Let me recast my Ravenous again. And yeah, those are the maggots. See the little icon they have on the top? And that makes them easier to spot and also to explode whenever they are near an enemy. I'll now show you what happens when Nidus dies. He will start using 15 the stacks. You have 5 seconds of being invulnerable. After that, we'll have to wait 30 seconds because of the mod we have. If we didn't have that augment, we won't have that cooldown up there, but we also wouldn't have those 200 more stacks, and I think that's worth the risk. It's gonna be really hard for you to die. Usually I never take damage, just because Arcane Grace activates and it pretty much fills my HP instantly. So yeah, unless you like disconnect yourself from the enemy you're linked to, which is very hard because you have to travel like 40 meters almost, and even then you have a few seconds to recast your 3. So yeah, gonna be a bit difficult to die, and if we somehow die we only have to wait 30 seconds. So yeah, I'm pretty sure he can just withstand pretty much anything up to level like 2000, so that's pretty safe. And he also has more HP than INAROS, which is very funny. And that's pretty much Nidus. This build focuses a lot on your abilities, so I do not recommend using it in Corpus style set, because nullifiers will annoy you a lot and you have to recast your 3 so many times it becomes just annoying at a certain point, but it's not impossible to use it. It's just annoying. You have to pay too much attention to nullifiers, which is usually not fun. But yeah, you're pretty much immortal and you'll just stand there, stomp the ground and kill everything in front of you, which is a very satisfying thing. And in a survival, it's a nice way to just stay in one spot and relax. And if you're playing with friends, you can also boost their power strength, which is always a nice thing to do. Alright, I'll now leave you guys to the showcase where I test this build in a 10-minute survival in Steel Path against greener enemies, so you can have a look at how it performs in a more realistic scenario. If you enjoyed the video, remember to leave a like and subscribe for more content. Have a great rest of the day, and bye-bye.
Gravity pull and it keeps me away. I would rather be here, lonely in space. I've made up my mind, I just wanna be free. I live my own life in a new galaxy. I wanna be weightless in the silence of the night sky. I wanna free fall into nothing. Taking the moment, starting all over. I wanna be free and live my own life in a new galaxy. I live my own life in a new galaxy. I can feel the memories fade.